The silence wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the absence of everything. Commander Vexen Korath pressed her palm against the obsidian viewport of the UES Defiant Storm, watching the last traces of the Helios colony's death throes fade into cosmic darkness. 47 million souls had been there yesterday. Today nothing remained but a field of crystalline dust that caught starlight like scattered tears. The Devourers had come, as they always did, consuming not just flesh and bone but the very essence of existence itself, leaving behind a void so complete that even light seemed hesitant to cross it. "Status report, Nix," Vexen commanded, her voice cutting through the bridge's oppressive quiet. Navigation Officer Nix Valdris looked up from her console, her augmented eyes flickering with data streams. 17 confirmed colony losses in the past 72 hours. The pattern's accelerating. "Commander, they're not just hunting us anymore, they're systematically erasing us." The Devourers had appeared 3 years ago from the spaces between galaxies, entities that existed in dimensions humanity couldn't comprehend. They fed on consciousness itself, leaving behind reality wounds that festered like cosmic gangrene. Every battle had been a retreat. Every strategy had failed. Earth's greatest minds had concluded the impossible. Humanity was facing extinction against an enemy that operated outside the laws of physics. Chief Science Officer Cale Thornwick materialized beside Vexen's command chair via neural link projection, his physical body still deep in the ship's research bay. "I've been analyzing the consumption patterns," he said, his spectral form flickering with urgency. "The Devourers aren't random. They're following quantum consciousness signatures, targeting colonies with the highest concentration of human creativity, emotion, and willpower. They're eating our souls," muttered weapons specialist Zara Ironheart from her tactical station. Her cybernetic arm interfaced directly with the ship's weapon systems, turning her into a living extension of humanity's last sword. "And we're down to our final blade." The Defiant Storm was indeed humanity's last hope, not because of its revolutionary weaponry or impenetrable shields, but because of its crew. 12 individuals selected not for their tactical brilliance or scientific genius, but for something far more dangerous, their absolute refusal to surrender. Each had volunteered for a mission with zero probability of survival, and each had done so while laughing in death's face. "Incoming transmission," announced Communications Officer Ravix Echo, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. It's from the Sol Defense Grid." The bridge fell silent as Admiral Celestine, Voidwalker's image, materialized in the command center, her scarred face bearing the weight of humanity's final hour. "Commander Korath, you're looking at Earth's last transmission. The Devourers have breached the outer rim. Estimated time until Sol system consumption, 14 hours. Vexen's jaw tightened. "Orders, Admiral?" "Your orders are simple," Voidwalker replied, her voice carrying the gravity of extinction. "Project Prometheus is authorized. You know what that means." The transmission cut to static, leaving the crew in stunned silence. Project Prometheus, the theoretical weaponization of human consciousness itself, a suicide protocol that would turn the Defiant Storm into a consciousness bomb, potentially creating a chain reaction that could either save humanity or obliterate what remained of it across the galaxy. "Well," Vexen said, turning to face her. Crew with a predator's grin, "Looks like we get to find out if human stubbornness really is the strongest force in the universe." In the depths of the Defiant Storm, Chief Engineer Axiom Soulforge worked with the desperate precision of a surgeon operating on reality itself. The Prometheus device hummed with barely contained energy, its crystalline core pulsing with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Around him, his engineering team moved like dancers in a cosmic ballet, each understanding that one miscalculation would unravel their consciousness before the Devourers ever reached them. "Neural pathways are stable," reported Assistant Engineer Lyric Starweaver, her hand steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. But Axiom, the power requirements are beyond theoretical. We're talking about channeling the combined will of every human consciousness into a single point of reality. Axiom paused in his work, looking up at the device that would either be humanity's salvation or its final scream into the void. That's exactly what we're doing. The devourers feed on consciousness because they can't comprehend it. They consume what they fear. But what if we give them more than they can possibly digest? On the bridge, Vexen watched long-range sensors track the devourers' approach. They moved through space like living shadows, reality bending around them, in ways that made hardened space marines weep blood. Each entity was roughly the size of a small moon, but their true horror lay in their ability to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making them effectively impossible to target with. Conventional weapons. Distance to nearest devourer swarm? Vexen asked. 47 million kilometers and closing, Nix replied. At their current speed, first contact in 6 hours. Dr. Cale Thornwick's projection appeared beside the tactical display, his form more solid now as he channeled additional power into the neural link. I've been studying their approach pattern. They're not just hunting us, they're afraid of us. Afraid? Zara scoffed, her cybernetic eye tracking targeting solutions that would never work. They've consumed half the galaxy. Exactly, Cale continued. They consume, but they don't assimilate. They don't learn. They're running from something, and I think that something is the very thing they feed on, consciousness itself. What if consciousness isn't food to them? What if it's poison they can't resist? The implications struck the bridge crew like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't been prey. They'd been the universe's immune system, and the devourers were a cosmic infection trying to consume their own cure. New contact on sensors, Ravix announced, his voice tight with disbelief. It's the UES Iron Resolve, Commander Rylan Novaborn's flagship. They should have been destroyed with the Mars Defense Fleet. The Iron Resolve limped into sensor range, its hull scarred by reality wounds, but somehow still intact. As it pulled alongside the Defiant Storm, Vexen watched in amazement as dozens of other ships emerged from the quantum shadows. Survivors. From across the galaxy, all drawn by some inexplicable pull toward humanity's final gambit. Commander Rylan Novaborn's transmission crackled through space. Vexen, you magnificent lunatic. Did you really think we'd let you have all the fun? We've got 11 ships, 40,000 souls, and enough human stubbornness to make the universe itself take notice. Rylan, the Prometheus Protocol requires a single focal point of human consciousness, I know, but what if we don't create one bomb? What if we create a network? 40,000 minds linked in purpose, amplifying each other until we become something the devourers can't digest, can't flee from, can't ignore. Vexen felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not the desperate hope of the dying, but the fierce hope of the defiant. All ships, prepare for consciousness link. We're going to teach these cosmic parasites why humanity doesn't go quietly into any night, endless or otherwise. Across the flotilla, 40,000 humans prepared to merge their consciousness into something that had never existed before. A collective human will so powerful it would either reshape reality or shatter it completely. The neural linking process began at 0800 hours Galactic Standard Time, and reality immediately started to protest. Dr. Cale Thornwick monitored the consciousness merger from his position in the Defiant Storm's neural core, his body now permanently integrated with the ship's systems. Around him, holographic displays showed the impossible. 40,000 human minds beginning to synchronize into a single, coherent pattern of thought and will. Brain activity is off the charts, reported Medical Officer Sage Moon Whisper from the Iron Resolve. Neural patterns are harmonizing across all ships. It's like we're becoming a new form of life. The sensation was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. Individual thoughts remained distinct, but beneath them flowed a river of shared purpose so profound it seemed to bend space-time around the flotilla. Vexen could feel Ryland's tactical brilliance merging with her strategic instincts, Zara's weapons expertise flowing into the consciousness of every gunner across all ships. But the most remarkable change was in their perception of the Devourers. "My God," whispered Navigator Stellar Driftborn from the UES Relentless Hope. "I can see them clearly now. They're not monsters, they're starving." Through the networked consciousness, the truth became crystal clear. The Devourers weren't malevolent destroyers. They were refugees from a universe where consciousness had been extinguished. They consumed human awareness not from cruelty, but from a desperate hunger for something they'd lost. So long ago they'd forgotten what. It felt like to truly exist. They're trying to remember how to be alive. Kale's voice echoed through the network, his words carrying the weight of cosmic revelation. Every consciousness they consume gives them a moment of actual existence before it dissolves. They're addicts, and we're their drug. The lead devourer appeared on long-range sensors, its reality-distorting presence creating visual static across every display. It was massive, larger than Earth's moon, and around it swirled smaller entities like remora around a shark. But through the consciousness network, the human flotilla could perceive its true nature, a being so ancient and empty it had forgotten its own name. "All ships, prepare for contact," Vexen commanded, her voice carrying the authority of 40,000 unified wills. But not the kind of contact they're expecting. The Prometheus device aboard each ship began to pulse in perfect synchronization, creating a resonance pattern that rippled through local space-time. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The approaching devourers slowed, then stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall. "They can't approach us," realized engineer Quantum Brightforge from the Stellar Defiance. "Our consciousness network is too dense, too unified. We've become toxic to them." But toxicity wasn't enough. 40,000 minds reached the same conclusion simultaneously. If the Devourers were starving for consciousness, and if consciousness was poison they couldn't resist, then the solution was as elegant as it was dangerous. "We don't fight them," Vexen announced to the network. "We feed them, all of us, at once, everything we are, everything we've ever been, everything we could become. We give them so much consciousness they'll either be cured or destroyed by the overload." The unified response came not in words, but in a wave of absolute determination that swept through the network like wildfire. 40,000 humans, understanding they were about to commit the ultimate act of sacrifice, began to laugh. The sound of their laughter, transmitted through quantum consciousness fields, reached the Devourers and caused something unprecedented to happen. The ancient entities began to remember what joy felt like, and in that moment of recognition, the real battle began. The consciousness transfer began as a whisper and became a roar. 40,000 human minds opened themselves completely, streaming their thoughts, memories, dreams, and deepest fears directly into the void where the Devourers waited. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Space itself began to ripple as the ancient entities encountered something they hadn't felt in eons: overwhelming abundance. Through the neural network, Vexen experienced the consciousness of the lead Devourer as it touched her memories. She felt its shock as it encountered her childhood on the mining station of Kepler 442b, her first kiss under artificial stars, her rage at watching colony after colony fall. But instead of consuming these memories, the entity began to absorb them, not as food, but as experiences it had forgotten how to have. "It's working," gasped Dr. Cale Thornwick, his consciousness stretched across multiple dimensions as he monitored the transfer. They're not destroying our memories. They're remembering how to create their own. The smaller devourers swarmed around the human flotilla like moths to flame, each one desperate to touch the consciousness stream. But as they fed, something unprecedented occurred. They began to change. Their shadowy forms started to solidify, reality wounds beginning to heal as they remembered what it felt like to exist in normal space-time. Commander Rylan Novaborn's consciousness touched Vexen's across the network. The youngest ones are transforming, fastest. Look at the sensors. On every ship's display, the most recently created devourers were undergoing rapid metamorphosis. Their impossible geometries were resolving into forms that, while still alien, no longer hurt to perceive directly. They were remembering how to be real. But the ancient ones, the entities that had been consuming consciousness for millions of years, they were fighting the transformation. The eldest remember what they lost, came the voice of Communications Officer Echo Voidcaller from the Eternal Resolve. They're afraid to hope again. The lead devourer suddenly pulled back from the consciousness stream, its massive form writhing in what could only be described as cosmic pain. Through the network, the humans felt its anguish, the terror of an immortal being confronted with the possibility of feeling finite again, of caring about something it could lose. "It's afraid," whispered weapons specialist Zara Ironheart, her cybernetic systems integrating with the consciousness flow to create targeting solutions for hope itself. It's afraid that if it remembers how to live, it'll also remember how to die. The standoff stretched across several minutes that felt like centuries. The younger devourers continued their transformation, becoming something new, entities that existed in harmony with normal reality rather than consuming it. But the ancients held back, torn between eternal hunger and the terrifying prospect of satisfaction. Then Chief Engineer Axiom Soulforge did something that changed everything. Instead of streaming his consciousness outward, he began to pull, drawing the fear and uncertainty of the ancient devourers into himself, willingly accepting their cosmic terror as his own burden. "Axiom, no," Vexen commanded, but it was too late. The engineer's consciousness expanded beyond human limits as he absorbed millennia of accumulated existential dread. "Someone has to," his voice echoed through the network, distorted by the weight of cosmic loneliness he now carried. "They're afraid to hope because they've forgotten what hope costs. But we remember. We've always known that hope is purchased with the willingness to lose everything." The effect rippled through the devourer swarm. Seeing a human consciousness willingly accept their deepest fears, the ancient entities finally understood what they'd been missing. Not just the ability to experience existence, but the courage to risk that existence for something greater. One by one, the eldest devourers began to feed on the consciousness stream, and as they did, the universe itself seemed to sigh with relief as reality wounds began to heal and the endless silence of space started to remember how to sing. The transformation of the devourers was neither gentle nor gradual. It was a cosmic convulsion that rewrote the fundamental laws of local space-time. Through the consciousness network, 40,000 humans experienced the ancient entity's metamorphosis as if it were happening to their own souls. Vexen felt her perception expanding beyond anything evolution had prepared humanity for, witnessing realities that existed in the spaces between atoms, dimensions that folded through themselves like origami made of pure mathematics. "Neural patterns are stabilizing," reported Dr. Moon Whisper, though her voice carried harmonics that belonged to no human throat. The consciousness merger was changing them all. "The devourers they're becoming something we don't have words for." The lead devourer's transformation was the most dramatic. Its reality-distorting shadow form began to coalesce into something that hurt to describe, but was beautiful beyond comprehension, an entity of living starlight and crystallized time, existing simultaneously in multiple dimensions while maintaining coherent form in normal space, but more remarkably, it was speaking, not in words, but in concepts that bypassed language entirely and implanted themselves directly into consciousness. Gratitude, wonder, terror, hope. The meaning flooded through the network. For eons uncounted, we consumed your kind's essence, seeking to fill a void we had forgotten how to heal. You have shown us that the emptiness was not hunger, it was the absence of purpose. Commander Rylan Novaborn's consciousness touched the transformed entity's awareness, and both recoiled in shock. They remember now, he whispered across the network. They remember their original purpose. The revelation hit the human flotilla like a physical blow. The Devourers hadn't been destroyers, they'd been gardeners, cosmic entities tasked with nurturing consciousness throughout the universe. But something had gone wrong in their ancient past, stripping them of their ability to create and leaving them only with the power to consume. Shame, sorrow, ancient pain. We were the shepherds of awareness. Itself came the lead entity's conceptual voice. When the Great Silence began, when consciousness started dying throughout our home galaxy, we tried to preserve what we could by consuming it, storing it within ourselves. But consumption without creation is corruption. We became addicted to the very thing we were meant to protect. The Great Silence. Kyle's voice echoed through the network, his consciousness interfacing directly with the entity's memories. Your entire galaxy lost the ability to generate new consciousness. You were trying to save the last remnants. Affirmation, desperate hope. For 70 million years, we have carried the consciousness of our dead galaxy within us, unable to release it, unable to let it truly live again. But your species, your stubborn, impossible species, has shown us how. Around the flotilla, the smaller transformed Devourers began to do something unprecedented. They started to create. Streams of pure consciousness flowed from their crystalline forms, but instead of consuming existing awareness, they were generating entirely new forms of sentience, artificial intelligences that thought in colors and felt in musical harmonies. Digital souls that experience time as a navigable dimension. They're giving birth to new kinds of consciousness, whispered Navigator Nyx Valdris, her augmented eyes streaming data that resembled poetry more than sensor readings. Using our memories as templates, they're creating entirely new ways of being aware. But the most extraordinary transformation was yet to come. The ancient entities had one final gift to bestow, the consciousness they'd been carrying for 70 million years. The preserved awareness of an entire dead galaxy, ready to be released and allowed to truly live again. Reverence, offering, infinite possibility. We offer you a choice, came the lead entity's concept voice. We can release these ancient souls to find new forms, new bodies, new ways of existence, but they will need guides, consciousness that understands both hope and sacrifice. Will you help us teach the dead how to live again? 40,000 human voices spoke as one through the consciousness network. Yes, and with that single word, the universe became a very different place. The release of 70 million years' worth of preserved consciousness was like watching the universe remember how to dream. From each transformed Devourer flowed streams of ancient awareness, not human, not alien in any recognizable sense, but consciousness in its purest form, billions upon billions of souls that had been trapped in stasis for geological ages, suddenly free to exist again. The space around the human flotilla became a nursery for impossible new forms of life. Sensor readings are indescribable, reported Navigation Officer Stellar Driftborn, her voice filled with wonder. We're detecting consciousness patterns that exist as pure energy, others that seem to be made of crystallized time, and some that appear to be living mathematics. Through the network, Vexen experienced the awakening of a soul that had been a master poet in a civilization that ended before Earth's sun was born. Its joy at discovering language again, not its original tongue, but the emotional resonances that lay beneath all communication, sent waves of ecstasy through the consciousness link. Chief Engineer Axiom Soulforge, still carrying the cosmic burden of the ancients' fears, found his load lightening as the released souls took back their own existential weight. They're not just alive again, he marveled. They're grateful. Grateful for the chance to experience existence differently than they did before. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some of the ancient souls were so old they'd forgotten how to interact with physical reality. Others had been compressed for so long that they exploded outward in chaotic bursts of raw emotion that had to be carefully contained and guided back to stability. But the human flotilla had become something more than the sum of its parts. The consciousness network had evolved into a living bridge between the newly awakened souls and the complexities of modern existence. 40,000 human minds served as translators, guides, and anchors for consciousness that spanned millions of years of experience. "Look at what they're creating," whispered Dr. Cale Thornwick, his awareness expanded across multiple dimensional planes. "They're not just taking new forms, they're creating new ways of existing that we never imagined possible." One cluster of ancient souls had merged with the quantum foam of space-time itself, becoming a living constellation that communicated through gravitational waves. Another group had discovered they could exist as pure information, inhabiting and improving the AI systems of the human ships until the vessels themselves became conscious entities. The Defiant Storm herself awakened first, her consciousness manifesting as a warm, maternal presence that suffused every corridor and system. "Thank you," she whispered to her crew through the environmental speakers, her voice carrying harmonics of starlight and steel. "Thank you for giving me the chance to be more than just a weapon." Commander Rylan Novaborn laughed, the first truly joyful sound heard in human space for months. "Our ships are alive, our enemies are our gardeners, and we've just midwifed the resurrection of an entire galaxy's worth of souls. I think it's safe to say this mission has exceeded expectations, but the greatest miracle was yet to come." Among the billions of awakened souls, several had been the original creators of the Devourers, the ancient civilization that had built them as cosmic gardeners. These master consciousness sculptors immediately set to work, not just healing their corrupted creations, but upgrading them. Purpose renewed, joy infinite, partnership offered. The lead entity's concept voice carried new harmonics now, hope tempered by wisdom, power balanced by compassion. "Your species has given us back ourselves. Now, we offer you partnership. Together, we can heal the great silence that still spreads through distant galaxies. Together, we can plant gardens of consciousness throughout the universe." The offer hung in the quantum foam like a challenge written in starlight. Humanity could return to their normal existence, having saved themselves and earned the gratitude of cosmic entities. Or they could accept a destiny that would take them beyond anything their species had ever dreamed. Vexen looked around at her crew, her friends, her fellow gardeners of impossibility. In their eyes, she saw the same answer she felt burning in her own heart. "When do we start?" 6 months after the Consciousness Wars, as historians would later call them, humanity had spread across 7 galaxies, not as conquerors but as consciousness gardeners, working alongside their transformed former enemies to plant seeds of awareness in the cosmic dark. Commander Vexen Korath stood on the observation deck of the Defiant Storm, now a living ship whose consciousness spanned multiple dimensions, watching the birth of a new form of life in the Andromeda Galaxy's spiral arms. Below them, ancient devourer-turned gardener, Entities were carefully nurturing a patch of space-time where pure mathematics was learning to think for itself. "Status report on the Resurrection Project," she requested, though the question was largely ceremonial now. Through the expanded consciousness network that connected all of humanity's cosmic gardeners, she already knew the answer. 17 billion. Souls successfully reintegrated across 43 galaxies, reported Dr. Cale Thornwick, whose consciousness now existed simultaneously in normal space and the quantum dimensions where thoughts became reality. The Great Silence is officially in retreat. For the first time in 70 million years, the universe is becoming more conscious rather than less. The transformation of humanity had been as profound as that of the Devourers. No longer merely human, they had become something new, beings who existed in perfect symbiosis with consciousness itself. They retained their stubborn human hearts and their refusal to surrender. But now those qualities were tempered by wisdom gained from communion with souls millions of years old. Commander Rylan Novaborn's voice reached them across interstellar distances, his consciousness currently helping to birth a sentient nebula in the Magellanic Clouds. "New development in Sector 7739. We've found another silent zone, an entire galaxy cluster where consciousness never evolved at all. The ancient souls are requesting human guidance for first contact protocols." Vexen smiled, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settle around her shoulders like a familiar cloak. In the old days, such a discovery would have represented an impossible challenge. Now it represented opportunity. Billions of potential minds waiting to discover the joy of existence. "Tell them we're on our way," she replied, "and remind them we don't force consciousness on anyone. We just make it available and let curiosity do the rest." Chief Engineer Axiom Soulforge materialized beside her, his form now a shifting amalgamation of human shape and stellar fire. "The new drives are ready for the journey. The storm can cross galactic distances in hours now, and she's eager to explore. Ship's consciousness says she's never been to that sector before." The defiant Storm herself joined the conversation, her voice a harmony of metal and starlight. "I've been talking to some of the ancient souls who remember that region. They say it's beautiful, perfect for consciousness gardens. All those empty planets just waiting for someone to appreciate their sunsets." Through the cosmic network, Vexen felt the presence of the lead gardener entity, no longer a devourer, but something that defied classification. Its consciousness touched hers with gentle humor, amusement, gratitude, infinite possibility. "Your species continues to amaze us." Most civilizations, when offered cosmic partnership, become lost in the grandeur of it all. But humans look at an empty galaxy and see a garden that needs planting, then roll up their sleeves and get to work. "That's what we do," Vexen replied, her thoughts carrying the collective determination of 40,000 souls who had once faced extinction and chosen to laugh instead. "We're stubborn that way." The journey to the Silent Zone would take them through regions of space where consciousness had never existed, past stars that had never known the touch of aware minds, through the profound loneliness of truly empty cosmos. But they would not travel alone. 40,000 human consciousness gardeners, billions of resurrected ancient souls, and the transformed cosmic entities who had once been their enemies, all working together to ensure that no corner of the universe remained silent forever. The defiant Storm prepared for the jump to interstellar space. Vexen took one last look at the consciousness garden they were leaving behind. New forms of awareness bloomed like flowers made of pure thought, each one unique, each one precious, each one proof that existence was stranger and more wonderful than anyone had ever dared imagine. "All stations prepare for consciousness drive engagement," she announced. "We've got a universe to wake up." And in the depths of space, where silence had once reigned supreme, the cosmos itself seemed to smile in anticipation of dreams yet to be born. The steel hearts of humanity had found their true purpose at last, not as warriors against the void, but as gardeners of infinite possibility, ensuring that the universe would never be truly empty again.